God, I love this music. Tom Lavin and the Powder Blues Band and Boppin' with the Blues. So I'm curious, how come you decided to do a benefit concert for Co-op?
Well, gosh, I mean, I love Peter Thompson. He was the hardest working, most idealistic guy in the world, really balanced. And he was there all the early days. Man, that guy was putting in 18 hours. And, for the love of it, I'm quite sure. He's since moved back to the States and gone on to all sorts of other different things. And I don't even know why, because I didn't really go out of my way to try and get Co-op Radio's attention. But I guess at the beginning of Powder Blues, we were sort of a bit of a thing about town. People were talking about us. And they just they somehow got a hold of me and said, what would you think about a live broadcast? And so we used to play that joint on 4th Avenue at Stevens called Rohan's Rock Pile, which was, everybody played there. I mean, you must have heard of it. I mean,
absolutely.
Alexis was there and Jerry Doucette was there. And of course, Lindsay from Prism and all, I mean, pretty well every band that ever came out of Vancouver from that point played at Rohan's Rock Pile. And so they would come down there and do live broadcasts, CFRO, that in those days, it was 95.6, I think.
Yeah.
I remember saying that many times, and we did broadcasts from there. I think we might have even done a broadcast from Izzy Walters or at the Penthouse, we did or the Garage or the Body Shop. I mean, all those places. They did a lot of live broadcasts with us in the very early days. I think even before the first album. And I think that helped spread the word about what we were doing. Because at the time, blues was not really a very popular musical genre. That was the days of the, 5-man car going cross town bus, we dress alike and play top 40.
What was your relationship with radio like in those days?
I think a lot of my path in life came from Buddhist beginner's mind. Somehow I instilled in myself that anything was possible and that a contract was anything two people could agree upon, and that the very best way to approach anything was out of assuming nothing to begin with. I had a spiritual experience like that with Elvin Jones, who was a very famous seminal jazz drummer and influenced the world of music in a very deep level. I was down in Gastown, and there was this joint. It wasn't a Pig and Whistle, but it was one of those horrible little joints there, maybe around 1970, and it said Elvin Jones is going to be there that night. And I thought, why? What on earth? I had no idea. So I went in at the appropriate time, and there was like one other person in the club, and there was a drum set and nothing else. And I just sat there, bought a drink and sat there, waited for something to happen. And this guy came in and he was looking at the drum set like he'd never seen it. And he was curious about it. And then he went up to the drum set, and I thought to myself, you better keep your hands off those drums, man. Those are Elvin Jones's drums, and you're going to get in deep trouble. Then he picked up a stick, and I thought, uh-oh, somebody's going to come out of the back room and beat him up. And then he tapped a cymbal and just turned his head and listened to it. He tapped another, and he tapped a drum and another drum, and then he sat down at the stool. And this was over a period of 5 minutes. And then he picked up the other stick, and then he started to play really quiet, and then he started to play around and around, and he played for 40 minutes, and it got to as though that a hurricane had entered the room all by himself. And that was Elvin Jones. I had no idea. I didn't know what he looked like. And here was a guy that was at the very pinnacle of the jazz world. For some reason, he must have had a night off and tried to make $100. But I had watched him approach the drums and play them as though he had never seen or heard a drum set before. And that really made a remarkable change in me. And it was just after that I opened a show for B.B. King at the Queen Elizabeth. That would have been 71, 72, a couple of years later. And I was blown away. His band was Sonny Freeman on drums and his brother Bobby Freeman. The band was out of Detroit. They're called Sonny Freeman and the Unusuals. And that was B.B. King's orchestra. And I watched them play. And that was the best B.B. King band ever, in my opinion. That was the real peak. And I was blown away with his show. And I'm sitting in a dressing room with him. I'll take a picture off the wall and show it to you in a minute of that night. Many years later, I got him to sign it. But I said, well, you sang Sweet Little Angel tonight. And you made it sound fresh. And I know you've been doing that for 15 years now. And how did you do that? And he said, well, son, there may be somebody out there in the audience that doesn't know what a B.B. King is. And I'm here to tell them. Here, let me get this picture. I don't know if this will show up, but this is actually the night backstage. Let's see if I can get this to appear.
Yeah, no, I can see it. Wow.
That's me with my long hair. That's the dressing room at the Queen Elizabeth. And BB is sitting with a pink and peach polyester double knit leisure suit. And he's holding a piece of Kentucky Colonel fried chicken in his hand. And you can see the bucket. And there's the bottle of stubby old Vienna beer in the background. So you can really date it. And I'm asking him that question. And afterwards, he gave me a personalized guitar pick, which I kept for decades. And we wound up being pretty close because we wound up playing so many shows together. I played the Commodore with him a bunch, and I played, what was that called there, that like the Sheraton 500 in North Vancouver had a big jazz bar, not the one on Robson, the one just across the Lionsgate. We played shows with him there. I interviewed him for TV and I interviewed him for radio, and we had a very long relationship. And in fact, his drummer, later on, Tony Coleman, wound up playing with Powder Blues for a while. And Tony and I, TC Coleman, he's very famous, we're still in touch. So yeah, BB changed me. What were you talking about? I had to go to that story to talk about beginner's mind. And we were talking about that. And I think that's how I've approached everything. I approached radio. That's what we were talking about, radio and my relationship with radio. And so I was very naive. I knew it was time. The band was tight. I thought, well, let's make an album. And so we went in and made the first album in, I think, 3 days, mostly live off the floor, a few overdubs. And then I thought, well, what the heck am I going to do with this? I went out to Praise Records in Burnaby, that at the time was just doing church music, gospel music, and pressed some copies. And then somehow through someone, I forget who, down that was at Total Sounds West on 12th and Vine. That was across from the old Carling O'Keefe Brewery. In the basement there, we had a little studio. And I got a list of FM radio stations. And I remember sitting on the floor with a magic marker and manila envelopes and putting the first album in there with a little note saying, could you play this? That's how naive I was. I had no idea. I didn't know there were promo men. I knew nothing. And in fact, some of those stations started playing it and they were getting a big reaction from it. And people couldn't figure out why, because it was not typically what was being played on the air at that time. I think Sweet Little Girl was the first thing that broke on Fox, which was not a single. And then I think Doing It Right broke. And then that album, I was pressing the album at Praise Records. I think it pressed 40,000 copies before we got a distribution deal. And I remember the guys at Praise, I think they were, Ukrainians or something, nice pair of brothers. And they had never pressed any more than a few hundred copies of anything. And I had their presses working night and day. And I remember one of them, they liked me. I was always paying them in cash. And one of them came to me and said, in a very heavy accent, well, why is this record selling? Are there dirty words on it?
It's funny.
I don't know what to tell you though. Yeah. I said, no, it's blues music. But
yeah, I thought what you were doing was perfect for where we were, what we were doing, certainly for FM radio, which was a brand new medium in those days. And we really did get to play what we wanted from thousands of albums and fresh tracks and lots of brand new music like yours.
Well, you were helping Local X too. I mean, you had Six Cylinder on the radio. You had the Wild Root Orchestra on the radio. Um, you know that I think that there was some support at that point that where you still had a little bit of freedom to be able to do that.
You know, it's funny because you were trying to figure out the music business and we were trying to figure out radio. It was a brand new ball game. There were no formats. There were a handful of radio stations in Canada and North America, in most of the major cities, and we experimented with all this new music that was being written and produced, and it was just a wonderful time to be in radio.
And that spilled over in radio to other stuff. I remember they had this weatherman in San Francisco that came on like it was really high. And people would drive off the road listening to him. We go, wow, man, it's gonna be hot today, man. Like, and when that heat comes and it's coming through the windows and it's shining on your body, and then your muscles relax, man. This would be like the weather report, right?
That was fun. This radio program and podcast is called The Conversation Lab. My name is Don Schaefer, and today we're speaking with Tom Lavin of the Powder Blues Band, who are doing a special fundraising tribute for CFRO Coopradio on May 15th at the Rio Theater, and tickets are available at the riotheater.ca. Sorry, riotheatertickets.ca. So what's the Powder Blues Band today? What's changed?
That's a funny thing too, because way back when, in the very beginning, they said, well, what's the point of this? And I said, to me, it's sort of blues is like the trunk of the tree of Western music. And it encompasses jazz and swing and bop and rhythm and blues and all kinds of stuff. And what appeals to me is that